that the water at Glenmorangie is different in a very different way, and there's only one other distillery in Scotland that has water like Glenmorangie. We have very mineral-rich water. It's not about the peatiness of the water or any of that nonsense. We have very high magnesium and calcium salt concentration in our Tarlogie spring water. If you talk to Belgian brewers, they know that very high magnesium concentrations in their water gives them much more floral, fruity fermentation, or flavors at the end of their fermentation. We think, and we don't know yet, tentatively we think that's happening at Glenmorangie during fermentation. The only other distillery to have very, very mineral-rich water, as far as I'm aware, is Highland Park. And again, when you taste some of their whiskies, you get a lot of these floral, they call it heathery notes. I would hazard a guess that it's also because of the mineral content of their water and the different fermentation. Slightly malolactic fermentation at the end there.
All right, there's a bit of a
potential,
lactic acid bacteria.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Absolutely.
definitely adding complexity, because for a simple, easygoing 10-year-old, this Glenmorangie already has a lot to say.
Absolutely.
It's not just vanilla and caramel right there. It's
absolutely. We've sent samples of Glenmorangie, 10-year-old, original, whatever you want to call it, off to French perfumeries, off to expert nosers who work in the sort of perfume industry and the chemical industry, who have amazing abilities to smell different compounds. And they've come up with anywhere between the low end, 23 to 26 aromas in Glenmorangie Original, which is at the maximum that most human beings can pick up, by the way, up to several hundred.
I'd have to have quite a few to come up with.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I may try.
Well, we should later, afterwards, when the camera's off.
When it comes to Astar,
yes.
You said there's a relation with the 10.
Absolutely. So Astar springs out of an experiment which we did to see, it was a secretive experiment that Bill Lumsden did many years ago to see if there was any way to further improve the already great original. And one of the ways we could look at was, since we're the experts at cask maturation, look at the quality of the white oak we're getting and see if we could improve that somehow. And one thing we found we could do was, by having these contracts, our own contracts, we could talk to the loggers and we could say, let's just hand select the slowest growing trees in the forest. Slow growing oak trees grow very slowly over the many, many years that they grow, because they only really grow in the spring of each season. They do minimal growth in the summer. Spring growth, that part of the ring structure that is the spring wood, is much more porous than summer wood. So if you pick out the slowest growing trees, they therefore have the highest proportion of spring growth to summer growth. Therefore, they are, over the whole expanse of the tree, more porous.
Right.
More porous wood made into a cask makes a more porous cask. A more porous cask acts more like a sponge and can soak up more spirit when you fill that cask. You're getting more spirit deep into the pores of the wood. Stands to reason, the deeper into the oak wood you get the spirit, the more of the lovely vanillins you can extract. So those wood notes, 70% of the flavor comes from the cask. More of those lovely flavors you can get out. So that was the theory. And we experimented with it, and we found that, yes, we can make Glenmorangie that's 10 years old that has even more wonderful flavors from the oak than the regular casks, which already, we only use our cask twice, industry leading, just for the original. The trouble is the cost of those casks is so phenomenal that we'd put ourselves out of business if we switched everything, and we couldn't anyway. The production pipeline just isn't there to be able to source enough casks to do that. So Astar was born out of it as a way to have, for Bill Lumsden really to show off how very good we can make it if you take all the finance guys and all the business guys out of the equation and just say this is it at its purest.
Well, but then what about the charring? Because you could probably get to even more spirit. Getting deeper into the wood with a different charring.
Well, it's funny because the charring on the Astar spec wood is almost none. It's very negligible, and the reason we do that is that the wood is so porous already that you don't need to charring. For those of you out there who don't know this, a large part of the reason why barrels are heavily charred isn't actually about the flavor. That's a side effect often. It's about opening the pores of the wood up to create more spirit absorption on a regular cask. The other thing it does is it creates this microscopic fingers of charcoal all around the inside of the wood, which massively increases the surface area to liquid concentration, and that also helps the absorption of spirit. But we don't need to do that because the wood's already, for Astar, is very, very porous.
Right.
The potential negative of the heavy char is just like if you burnt a bagel in your toaster in the morning. It's bitter sometimes.
That's very frustrating.
You know? So very, very light char, we don't need it. But what we've developed is this infrared heating probe system that goes into these Astar barrels, and without direct flame contact with the wood, toasts into the wood.
So we're talking about a heavy toasting,
toast,
more than even light char.
Yeah, heavy toast, light char. So, you know, very, very minimal amount. We do have a small period of time on a gas burner, but it's the minimum you can get away with. And it's just to make sure there's at least some colour in Astar. Glenmorangie Nectar d'Or sounds very French. It isn't. The name Nectar d'Or is actually a Scots Gaelic word. May surprise you, but La Santa, Ruban, on Quinta Ruban, and Nectar d'Or, all Scots Gaelic words. And the Scots Gaelic people, the people that spoke Scots Gaelic, those tribes, originated from northern France and northern Spain. They migrated north to Ireland. They brought Christianity with them. They migrated north through Ireland, and they made their way to Scotland, probably via Islay. It's a very good possibility. They brought the knowledge of distillation with them because it was the Roman Catholic monks that knew how to distill. So Christianity and distillation came to Scotland, and the language of these people, the Gaelic language. So very similar to Irish Gaelic, and actually quite similar to French and Spanish. So La Santa sounds very Spanish. Ruban sounds very Spanish or French or Portuguese. Nectar d'Or sounds very, very French. Until you have to look very closely at the bottle, but on the, I mean, you're a Frenchman, you know, that's not French with an accent on the O.
That's right.
Right.
It's not.
That's not French.
No, it sounds very French, but with the accent, it's not.
With the accent on the O, you should actually pronounce it as if you don't know how to pronounce French. Nectar d'Or. It should be d'Or.
Nectar d'Or.
D'Or. Just absolutely straight up Scottish d'Or. Nectar d'Or.
I like that very
so
much.
There you go.
I will make sure to get closer to the bottle more often.
There you go. Yeah. People don't pick that up. It's a little bit too subtle. But
what does it mean then?
Intentionally, we've make people kind of fool people to think that it's a French name because it's alluding to the secondary casks, which are Sauterne dessert white wine barriques. You know, possibly the most expensive wine on the planet, still wine on the planet, are various different Sauternes. This wine that's created by allowing botrytis, the noble rot, to infect or attack the grapes, and the grapes are shriveled on the vine, allowed to shrivel right up so they look like little raisins, and then day after day, carefully, they're hand-picked one after another, just before they're going to drop on the floor, and if they drop on the floor, they're ruined, the whole thing. You know, so very, very labor-intensive to produce the wine. This wine has been in these casks, these French Limousin oak casks. We buy the used French Limousin oak casks from the cooperage that supplies the finest Sauterne wine producers in the world, Tonnerie François Frère. We buy those casks, we ship them to Scotland, and we age our 10-year-old Glenmorangie original for 2 additional years in these absolutely wonderful Sauterne barriques.
There
you go. Absolutely. Why not?
Oh.
Now, I don't want to make you feel homesick.
Thank you.
But if our master distiller, Dr. Lumsden, is to be believed, the aromas and flavors he picks out in here remind him of being on holiday, being on vacation in France with his family, and getting up early one morning, going out to buy croissants and brioche for breakfast, and walking into that little local patisserie, opening the door, you can hear the little bell ringing now, and being hit by that waft at like 6, 7 in the morning of freshly baked croissants and brioche, butter pastry notes, and it's all there. Delicious butter pastry notes, lots of lovely citrus again, that's underlying Glenmorangie style. But I think pretty much through the Glenmorangie line, there's usually orange citrus with everything that we have here, whether it's very citrusy, fresh orange with the original, almost like a sort of toffeed marmalade here, dark chocolate with orange, chocolate orange there. Again, back to the more citrusy, almost like a creme brulee with orange marmalade there.
On the 18.
But with Nectar, or the one exception, the citrus here is lemon. I really think it's like a tarte au citron.
Not the orange.
No. Here is the one where it's lemon. Almost grapefruit sometimes.
That's absolutely marvelous.
Now the texture, the non-chill filtration has really helped here in amplifying that sense of the sort of butter pastry notes. We get the texture of it as well. Perfect breakfast whiskey. Don't you have a breakfast whiskey?
Oh yeah.
Everybody should have a breakfast whiskey.
We should all pick our breakfast whiskey.
Absolutely. You should run that as a little thing on the website. Name your favorite breakfast whiskey.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I won't get any sort of complaint from
No, of course not.
the association.
The answer from some people might be the nearest one.
No, obviously, if you wake up late.
Yes, absolutely. Then it could be anything.
Breakfast whiskey.
Yeah.
This is luscious.
Yeah, really fantastic.
And only 12 years old. So how long is that? Is it really a full 2 years?
Yes. Yeah, it's 10 years and then 2, pretty much. I mean, there may be a slight variation there, but just simply because we're marrying casks for the single malt bottling to get the flavour profile right from one bottling to the next. But broadly speaking, it's always 10 plus 2.
Right.
And what we can definitely say, because there's a 12-year-old age statement on there, is that it's minimum 12 years old.
You mentioned that you're using only first and second fills
Yes.
on your American oak
Yes.
barrels.
Yeah.
What happens with that finishing, with that extra maturation?
Same thing. The casks that when we get them, we're only using the extra maturation casks, the sherry, port, and sauterne barrels twice. So these casks are pretty expensive, particularly with the sauterne barrels. To have those brought all the way to Scotland at great expense, purchase these casks, and then only use them twice, it's a pretty big undertaking for us. But we're absolutely adamant about the quality of the cask. As I said, 70% of the flavour comes from the cask. You mess around with the cask, you're going to mess around with the quality of the whiskey. So with Signet, it's looking back to the barley. And what could we do to really profoundly do something different? And our master distiller, Bill Lumsden, was actually trained as a brewer originally. And brewers know that they can change massively the style of their beer, from a very light beer to something like Guinness, by the level of charring of the barley. So if you heavily char your barley after the germination period, instead of just drying it, you're going to create a beer like a stout.
So you're roasting.
So you're roasting
the barley.
it, and you're actually roasting it in something that resembles a coffee bean roaster. And these little barley grains come out of the roaster looking like little coffee beans. Use that barley to ferment and then distill and go the whole process of creating a single malt. And you have 2 things to think about. One, drastically different flavor profile. That's the good news. We're trying something new. There's something bad though, something problematic. The alcohol yields. As you're charring your barley, the enzymatic activity is basically killed off.
Yes, you're killing your enzymes.
So for every ton of barley, if you heavily char that barley, you're getting negligible alcohol yield. It's a big problem. It's very expensive to do.
That's because you're not allowed to add.
No, not allowed
enzymes.
Not allowed to add enzymes. Not allowed to add sugars. Anything. Obviously, it's barley, water, yeast. That's it. So whatever you do to your barley, you have to be constantly thinking about the yields of alcohol per ton of that barley. That drops off significantly with the high roast chocolate malt when we're talking about Signet. Perhaps now explains part of the reason that it's certainly not an expensive single malt in the greater scheme of things, but it's the most expensive here.